What's up, everyone? What are some of your all-time favorite movies or stories? Go ahead and shout them out now. One thing that makes a movie great is how much we like the main characters. Producers create characters we can get attached to by giving us a deeper look into both the good and the bad parts of their life. Seeing both makes us feel for them, makes us actually care about what's happening to them, and helps us like them more. Movies show us some of what happens in a character's life by creating a backstory, which is a way of letting us know some of the things that happen to the character before what's actually currently happening. For example, maybe the movie centers around a dad saving his daughter, but their backstory shows us that their relationship had a lot of brokenness in the past. Or maybe the movie centers around a superhero defeating his greatest enemy, but we discover that they used to be great friends before something divided their relationship. Understanding the backstory helps make a story more complex, interesting, and compelling, but sometimes introducing these things can seem random. When the dad is in the middle of a chase to find his daughter's kidnappers and suddenly the movie flashes back to a scene where he and his daughter are arguing in the kitchen, you want to be like, wait, what? What does this have to do with anything? Chances are you've already felt this way just living your own life. They are the moments in our real life stories that make us ask the same questions. What's happening? What's the point of me going through this? We're talking about difficulties, pain, struggle, problems, the things that will be a part of our backstory one day. But as for now, they're in our current story. And when we're in the middle of them, it's rough. For the past few videos, we've been talking about this question. What do you do when you don't know what to do? In this video, we're talking about what to do when people make fun of you, a friend dies, your learning disability makes everything more difficult, your parents' divorce is killing you inside, your self-harm habit gets out of control, someone you love gets really sick. In other words, the heavy stuff, the painful stuff, the real life stuff. But before we can even ask the question, what do I do? We often ask ourselves, why? Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? Why is this happening now? Just like a movie that flashes back to a scene that doesn't seem to make any sense at that moment, difficulties can make us feel the same way. Difficulties often feel random, pointless, and unnecessary. Sometimes we see the point after the fact, when it's part of our backstory. For example, maybe you have a broken friendship, but looking back you realize that the friendship led you to make some bad choices. And you may have not liked that version of yourself very much. So even though it felt bad at the time, you're now actually glad it happened. Sometimes we even see the point in the moments while the difficulties are happening. For example, maybe you found yourself struggling in band and it was on you. You weren't putting in the effort. You got called out by your section leader, and so you started doing extra rehearsals and you got better. It wasn't fun, but it was for the best. It's nice when it happens, but most of the time, things that don't feel good seem pointless. We've all had an experience that hurts and feels pointless in the moment. Whether it was not making a team, not getting the part in the musical, going through drama with friends or family, we've all asked ourselves, why me? If you're like me, there's usually not many good answers in the moment. And what's worse, in real life, unlike the movies, our difficult circumstances don't usually get a pretty bow tied on them while we're walking through them. The outcome may not turn out how we want them to. In those times, it can be really difficult for us to see any point behind our pain, to find hope despite the hurt, or to find the determination to keep going despite the difficulties. But when we find life confusing or difficult, we can actually learn what we can do by looking to people who have handled similar situations, which brings us back to the life of Joseph. We've been looking at some events in Joseph's life. The account of his journey found in the Old Testament of the Bible basically means he lived long before Jesus. And here's a recap. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers. He was taken to a foreign country, Egypt, where he was forced to work for a high-powered official. He was falsely accused of doing something he didn't do and was thrown into prison. From free man to slave to prisoner. If anyone had earned the right to ask, what's the point? Why is this all happening to me? It was Joseph. And that's where we pick up. Joseph is in jail for a crime he didn't commit, and here he makes some new friends. Check it out. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, in the same prison where Joseph was confined. Pharaoh is the boss of all of Egypt. So if he got mad at you and wanted to throw you into prison, that's where you'd go, even if you didn't do anything illegal. And that's what happened to these two guys. They were thrown in prison with Joseph. The story continues. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were troubled. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." There is a lot happening here. Remember, Joseph is in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And even in this really difficult situation, Joseph continues to honor God. The men told Joseph their dreams. And with God's help, Joseph told them what they meant. And then what Joseph said would happen, happened. Based on the dream of the chief cupbearer had, Joseph said that he would be restored to a favorable position. And he was. As for the chief baker, Joseph said that he would not have the same luck. And he didn't. Listen, the rest of the story of what happened here was just as crazy. It's definitely worth the read. But you would think, given what Joseph had done to help the cupbearer out, it would have made sense for the cupbearer to speak up and say, "Thank you, Pharaoh, for helping me out. I just wanted to let you know that I was locked up with a guy who interpreted my dream to perfection. I know you have dreams that need interpretation, so you may want to think about getting this guy on staff pretty quick." But that's not what happened. The story tells us that the cupbearer forgot about Joseph. He got out of jail and went on with his life. Oof. Over time, as Joseph was waiting in jail for his friend to remember him, he realized that not only did his friend forget him, what he did to help his friend didn't help his situation. I'm sure he was tempted to wonder, what was the point of all of that? It didn't help my life get any better. Has God forgotten about me? I thought I did what was right, and I'm still here in jail. But then 2 years later, Pharaoh had two dreams that troubled him. He desperately searched for someone on his staff who could interpret them, but no one could. And that's when the cupbearer remembered Joseph. Pharaoh called for Joseph, who interpreted the dream with incredible accuracy. And as a result, eventually Joseph was made second in charge of all Egypt. Under Joseph's leadership, Egypt survived a terrible famine, which eventually put Egypt in a position to save Joseph's family and other people from his homeland who were suffering from famine. It was 2 full years later before the cupbearer even remembered Joseph. And even when Joseph was promoted to a position of incredible power, he was still living in a foreign land. So it wasn't like Joseph was able to go home as a free man. And Joseph was still second in command under Pharaoh, which meant if Pharaoh was having a bad day and decided he wanted Joseph dead, he could snap his fingers and it would happen. So no, this didn't make Joseph's life perfect, not even close. But when we see the big picture and understand the context of this backstory, we see that Joseph's challenging circumstances uniquely positioned him to do something great. Joseph still had to wait 2 years. All the good things that happened in Joseph's world didn't make those bad things okay. Being promoted to second in command didn't undo the challenges he faced leading up to that. But at the same time, those difficult circumstances positioned him and prepared him for something great, something only he could do. And the same is true for you and me. Hard things can happen in your life, and it is important to remember that just because something happens doesn't mean it was something God did to you or wanted for you. Because of sin, things happen that aren't fair, that don't make sense. People hurt each other, and they create systems of hurt. But when it seems like it's impossible that anything good can come out of a situation, remember God is really good at doing the impossible. Check this out. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purposes. It may not seem to make things all better and may not even make sense yet, but God is taking our hurts, difficulties, and pain and redeeming them. That means even if it was done in evil and meant for evil in our lives, he can use it for good. Not only for us, but for others. In other words, when you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. This doesn't mean we can tie a bow on every bad thing. It doesn't mean everything will be fixed and go back to how it was before everything bad happened. It just means we can leave room for God to tell a new story in our hard circumstances. It means we can have confidence in God's ability to redeem things, to know that good can come from bad. It means that the bad stuff doesn't get the last word. The hardest and worst things we can experience aren't the end of us or our story. In fact, they could be a part of something more. So when we go through pain and we can't see the purpose yet, here are some things that can help us get a better perspective. First, remember that no one else has your life story. Your difficult circumstances aren't fun, but they are unique to you. They put you in a position to learn, grow, and discover things no one else can. God is using your tough stuff in ways you can't imagine because they have shaped you in ways no one else has been shaped. That may not make it easier, but it may give you a perspective or a way to see it differently. Second, remember that your story can interact with others. Although no one else has your life story, many people do face similar circumstances, and you could be a voice to help them through their own challenges and pain. A help you would not have been able to provide if you hadn't gone through it yourself. So, when you go through family drama, you can help people who are going through family drama. When you go through a hard breakup, you can understand how someone else feels when they're going through a hard breakup. When you deal with a sickness, illness, or injury, you can encourage people who are going through the same thing. When you have had big doubts and questions in your faith, you can be a safe place to talk about those for people who are asking questions of their own. You can be a person who looks around, sees other people's struggles, and say, "Oh, you feel that? Me too. Oh, you've experienced that. I've been there. I can tell you my experience." The truth is, the next best thing to having something fixed for us is having someone who has been through it too walk alongside our mess with us. That's one of the reasons why we have multiple youth leaders. These leaders have been through some stuff, often more than you realize. And if you're going through something, one of the best people to talk to is your leader. Even if they've never experienced your exact situation, they will have a better perspective because of what they've experienced. Joseph went through pain that felt pointless. But when we see his backstory, we see that God used his problems and position for a purpose. God took his impossibly bad situation and used it to create unimaginable good down the road. We'll talk more about that in the next video, but for now, imagine if he could do the same for you. What if God used your painful situation to position you for something amazing that you haven't even imagined yet? And what if the first step is simply asking for his help?